DW Africa Link.
Just days before it was set to begin, the world's largest conference on human rights and technology, RightsCon, was abruptly cancelled in Zambia. Authorities say it conflicted with national values, but rights groups including Human Rights Watch are not convinced, pointing instead to possible external pressure. So who could be influencing what Zambia allows and what it doesn't allow when it comes to human rights debates? Stay with us. This is Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter across Africa. I am Adwoa Tenkoramaa, Domena, your host for today.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Zambia has cancelled RightsCon, the annual global forum that brings together policymakers, activists, journalists, and tech leaders to debate human rights in the digital age. Now, the Zambian government on 29th April said the decision was, and I quote, necessitated by the need for comprehensive disclosure relating to key thematic issues proposed for discussion during the summit. What raised eyebrows, however, is that just 3 days earlier, on April 26th, Zambia's Ministry of Technology and Science had formally endorsed the conference. So what changed? Human Rights Watch calls the explanation flimsy, arguing that it signals an attempt to tightly control the human rights conversation and also points to possible external pressure, including from China. So what's really going on? To unpack this, I have been joined by Tabani Moyo. He's Executive Director at the Media Institute of Southern Africa, MISA. I also have DW correspondent in Nairobi, Kenya, Andrew Wasike. Welcome, gentlemen. Tabani, just days after Zambia's Ministry of Technology endorsed RightsCon, we have the government in another statement now saying the same conference that has been endorsed did not align with its interest. Did this decision come as a surprise to you?
Yeah, a major surprise because this was an event that was, being planned all along. The government knew about it for quite some time. The multiple stakeholders who were going to attend were equally making preparations to be in Lusaka until that unfortunate announcement happened, which took everyone by surprise, which could possibly speak to the fact that it might have been pressures from elsewhere. Other than the government, which had initially accepted to host, was preparing to host, only to indicate that it is no longer in a position to host.
Why are we alluding to pressure from elsewhere?
Because of the shifts in geopolitics and the maligning actors in the region, on the continent specifically. These are nations that are quite powerful in terms of supporting successive administrations in African context. And what this has done is to show that there are still agreements in place that are contrary to the broader framework of human rights that we have come to know as a community. And what this means is that the work of human rights is going to be increasingly difficult in the coming years. Issues to do with surveillance will be much more galvanized, issues to do with cybersecurity, issues to do with online patrols and weaponization of those laws to minimize the expansion of the digital rights space will become more pronounced, not only in Zambia, but in the entire region, because these are nations that are quite pronounced on sharing notes and practices, behaviors, and instruments of power. And we've located it over the years, and this is where it is pointing to.
There is the argument that the government itself only said it was postponing the event, and it did not, openly say it was canceling it. And so on that basis, would you say there was still room to negotiate for the event to happen at a later date?
No, this was a technical cancellation. What Access Now did was the only logical conclusion. If someone say you have got delegates on the ground and they say we are postponing, they know that your conditions and circumstances do not allow for you to re-emerge from those cost structures you would have engaged in. So that was technically a way of saying we are no longer proceeding as planned. And I think the entire community understood the language and the process culminating to the cancellation of the event. It was a reality that you'll be in denial to say that no, we are going to emerge with another date. Technically, they were just taking you on a garden straw.
Prior to this incident, did we have a perception that Zambia was sort of intolerant towards the civic space or the expression of human rights and all of that? Did we have that perception?
Yeah, well, it was always a mixed bag. Zambia, just like other African countries in the region, are in a mixed bag of progress and regression. And these are some of the major indications that we move one step forward and then we backslide. One positive step forward and a huge strides backwards and clawing back into the gains that would have made on human rights. We have been on the sidelines screaming loud that the recently enacted laws, cyber laws, were highly security centered rather than balanced with human rights concerns in terms of digital rights. And it showed to us that these were some indications that were pointing to the fact that the situation can take either new levels. And the cancellation of RightsCon was a gear up in terms of the very sad direction of clawback, wherein you then limit the way the movement on digital rights and expression is supposed to engage, share notes, experiences, and exchange ideas that shape the digital rights and digital space development. But we could see the tail lights the tail signs that this process is going in a wrong direction with those laws that came into effect, and the general lack of appreciation of dissenting voices. It had an indication that things might be going a way. Unfortunately, it's going in the wrong direction compared to what we would have thought it was going to be.
Thank you. Tabani, hold your thought for me. Let me introduce Andrew quickly. And I'm bringing in Andrew because in Kenya, in East Africa as well, there's been a decline in some level of freedom the press is enjoying over some years. Andrew, what can you tell us about the press freedom situation in Kenya?
Thank you very much for having me. On the ground, you can actually feel it, the decline you're talking about. It's not just something, previously we used to read these things in reports and we are wondering, is this really our Kenya? So yeah, this is something that we're experiencing. As journalists, we are finding ourselves in situations where covering a story feels riskier than it used to. So, Kenya is known for holding a lot of protests, especially when the government infringes on the people's side. So during protests, for example, you are not just thinking about going out there, getting the story, getting the shot, getting the quote. You're also thinking about your own safety. There have been cases where journalists are tear gassed. Some, even my friends, have been roughed up. And in some cases, media professionals are even detained while clearly they have been identified as media. So beyond the physical side, there is also restriction. Access is becoming harder. During this, the rule of President William Ruto is not like back when Uhuru Kenyatta was president. Information feels like it's being more controlled, and sometimes you are told directly or indirectly what not to cover, especially for local media. So when Kenya drops to around that position, I think it's 117 globally, it shows that many of us are experiencing daily.
That's quite a gloomy picture you've painted there. But let me draw you quickly into the Zambia conversation. You reported on that story when the incident happened, I think, over the weekend. What can you tell us about Zambia's cancellation of the RightsCon?
there's a lot of concern. In some WhatsApp groups that I'm in, journalists are talking about this more openly, about safety, not now for our country, but for the globe as a whole, because RightsCon involves everybody from every corner of the earth. So they are saying that such incidents are happening more frequently. So it's not just here in Kenya. So people are wondering if an international summit, which was supposed to gather everybody from across the world, is being controlled by the government. The government is saying if it can happen or it cannot happen. People are asking, what is the world turning to? At the same time, there's still a strong sense of duty. Journalists here from Kenya and across Africa have been covering this story just like I did over the weekend, because they feel that everybody needs to know that such a crucial conference has been cancelled. And why has it been cancelled? The organizers of the event came out and said, talked about the government's involvement. Names have been going around. China has been mentioned. So this topic will not go away, and it goes a long way to just show that things are not okay across the continent and the globe when it comes to rights.
Interesting. Tabani, on the allegations specifically about China's involvement, how significant is this in the scheme of things?
Well, it is significant because it changes everything. If it was a host government decision purely on its own grounds, it was going to outline its major concerns around why it is all of a sudden making a U-turn. But because of the nature of our politics, it is showing that more than that which meets the eye is the broader geopolitics at play, which is now impacting how our societies are ultimately behaving. So this will have serious ramifications on the broader rights, as I spoke about, because what we will then see is a stronger hand of China then influencing how the rest of the member states behave when they are hosting such interventions. So probably this is the beginning of a long storm, wherein we have been induced to the shock in Zambia. But if you try then again in another country, it might be facing the same headwinds. Hence the need for the future of collaboration, advocacy, and convenings of this nature to have multiple pronged strategies when you are convening global conversations that will no longer focus on a single country because of the far-reaching hand of these underlying circumstances and the hidden hand of maligning actors. You now need to plan with 3, 4, 5 countries or 2 or more continents in advance, because you might not know how even the most predictable of societies would end up behaving if they are operating under duress. The way diplomatically, so to speak, duress diplomatically, so to speak, as it has unfolded in Zambia.
Beyond Zambia, what is the situation in the rest of Southern Africa?
It's a mixed bag of being under siege and progressive development. You saw the recent rankings of Reporters Without Borders tipping South Africa and Namibia as still the most progressive on the continent. But progressive being a relative concept, because in the most progressive societies like Namibia, you remember a journalist was increasingly under pressure for asking the president uncomfortable questions, being chased out of the State House, among other things. Even in South Africa, when we had disturbances like what is happening in the current xenophobic attacks of other nationals, the media is the first line of casualty. So it's progressive in a relative manner. Then you have those countries that are sliding in your case of Mozambique, Tanzania, Zimbabwe. Technically, these ones are showing high heavy-handedness in terms of lawfare and extrajudicial mechanisms in dealing with the media. Countries like Zambia, Botswana, Lesotho are still being viewed as at the middle of the fence because of their presumed soberness. But even in Botswana, you remember journalists facing the wrath of the Directorate of Intelligence, who storm into newsrooms, stop stories from proceeding. Zambia with the recent developments at RightsCon, but beyond that, the laws that govern cybersecurity, among other things. So it's a mixed view.
Tabani, I'm going to come to you shortly, but Andrew, it appears the situation is not restricted to Zambia or to Kenya. It looks like the entire region is facing some challenges when it comes to rights, expression, the work of the media and all of that. For Kenya particularly, why do you think things are happening the way they are happening?
It is a mix of both political tension and how states are responding to criticism. I'm not talking about Kenya alone. I'm talking about Kenya, Uganda, be it Congo, be it Nigeria. The other day we had elections in Tanzania and also in Uganda. With a focus on Tanzania, you saw what happened just because of some criticism. So many people died, and also news was not coming out of Tanzania. There was no coverage. We were the ones who were covering the news. So I would say over the last few years, we've seen more protests in many African countries. There is a lot of pushback from the public, and at the same time, there is a harder stance from authorities. This is why you are seeing as if it's copy-paste across African countries. Journalists end up right in the middle of all this. When the political temperatures rises, especially during election periods, and even let's say when they're passing important bills, be it the budget and all that, when the political temperature rises, media becomes a target because it's the messenger. And to that, authorities do try to control narratives, especially during such crises. This is why rankings are dropping. And this is specifically the case for Kenya. So it's not one big event. I would say it's sort of like a gradual shift.
Tabani, does it look like things are going to get better?
It's a difficult projection, but gauging from what has happened with the shifts and the shake-ups at the global architecture of governance, where a multipolar system would maintain leadership of various superpowers. This is an era of, we've entered an era of brazen impunity, depending on which side of the fence you are seated in. Way back, you understand the US would be taking lead in terms of the democratic model, the EU supporting the same. But with the rise of right-wing, everyone is inward-looking, and this is the cost of being inward-looking because, brazen dictatorships will then utilize this opportunity to dig in. So I don't see it getting better if there's no reclaiming of leadership at geopolitical levels, at global stature. This is a mirror reflection of the collapse of a multilateral approach to democratic existence. What it is just giving you are symptoms of what happens if everyone becomes inward-looking. You then have people acting with impunity, and these leaders in the continent are seeing this window of opportunity to consolidate their ground, silence dissent, and a heavy-handed approach to governance.
If we don't see this getting better anytime soon, what then can CSOs and the media or rights groups or people who, organize some of these events do to, insist upon having a semblance of check when it comes to how much the government is trying to control access to information, how much the government is trying to control the civic space? What can they do?
Solidarity is the main defense line when you are under siege. I think there is scope for people-to-people solidarity to galvanize our voices and utilizing every space which is still partially open or remaining open So the approach is not to dissent, to evacuate the center, which is full of contradictions, but to utilize every space to escalate solidarity on the messaging. Be clear on the messaging that digital rights, freedom of expression, media freedom are intertwined. They are not treated separately. And if one frontier loses, where we have got a presence in terms of digital rights activism and media freedom, that domino effect will end up leading to everywhere where everyone is. Just like a pandemic spreads, that is the cost of not escalating solidarity when you see threats encroaching on the front line.
Andrew, let me wrap up with you. If things do not change as they are now, what are the long-term consequences we're looking at?
I think if things remain the same way, we are going to see a lot of pressure from governments across Africa. There will be harassment, especially targeting journalists and just media houses. Arrests are going to be made. People are going to be out of jobs because media houses are struggling. Budgets are tight, jobs are not secure. So that makes journalists more vulnerable because when a job is on the line, it affects how boldly you can report. So I think if things do not change, if the media continues to work as if it is intimidated, then we are going to have a rise in fake news, which has been a challenge. I think that it will reach a point where the states across Africa will be controlling the narrative. They will be controlling the story because people are living in fear. The other day when I was covering Zambia, I was informed by some of the analysts I was speaking to about RightsCon being cancelled, and they were telling me that, did you know that in Zambia, people are not even allowed to protest? On Freedom Day, they can come out. But also the media that are covering them, they have to be careful about what they are reporting. This is Zambia. This is where this international summit was supposed to be. Now, picture this copy-pasted all across Africa. You'll find that if there is anything rights-related, human rights, press freedom across Africa, Uganda will say, if Zambia did it, then we can get away with it. So I think things will not be well in the future, taking this into consideration.
You just heard Andrew Wasike, CW correspondent in Nairobi, Kenya. Earlier, you heard Tabani Moyo. He's executive director for the Media Institute of Southern Africa. Grateful for your time, both of you.
Thank you for having me.
A great pleasure.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
From Southern Africa to East Africa, countries like Kenya have also seen significant decline in press freedom and rights repression in the civic space.
Media is a very integral part of society because that is how majority of the people get to know what is happening in their region and across the world. Here in Kenya, we see journalists putting their lives in danger to cover every news, even the ones that paint a bad picture for the government.
So we call upon all of us to continue with this by urging all the stakeholders, all the duty bearers, and everybody, so that we can have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. So what we are looking at is resilience. So journalists are coming out, they need the knowledge, they need the skills, and they need everything that is required for them to be able to highlight some of this. We have to show this is wrong, this is right, this is how it can be done.
Protect and respect the freedom of the press. We are currently operating under very difficult circumstances where even the national government is trying to block journalists from doing their work. This one should not happen. The same also applies to other stakeholders, the civil societies, the county governments, and all those we work with on a daily basis. Our plea to you is to respect the work of journalists. It is protected in the Constitution, and we need to protect that Constitution.
Even as we celebrate today, journalists does not have much to celebrate about it.
The cancellation of RightsCon in Zambia, according to experts, speaks to a broader issue about who really controls the civic space, digital discourse, and the future of human rights conversations across the continent. What is the situation in your own country? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook and on TikTok at DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Eddie Micah Jr. And I am Adwoa Tenkoramaa Domena. Bye for now.